Hey, I'm Nick Boy, and welcome to the Somewhat Daily News Backup for Monday, the 22nd of February. It's somewhat daily because we come at you somewhat daily every Monday and Wednesday live on Twitch with all the gaming news that's fit to talk about. Today, I am joined by Peter, the Woodsman Burns.
This time I'm using power tools.
Yeah, that's a little heads up that you may hear the occasional drill or saw or nail gun or scream as someone severs a leg in the background. My neighbors appear to be building either a fence or a fort. And, oh, there it is right now. So apologies for anyone listening who is getting a lot of building noise in the background. I went and screamed at them, but they couldn't hear me over the incredible sound of their power tools. As usual, the Somewhat Daily Backup is brought to you by Hero Pocketeer Tim from the Learn Programming Academy. Tim's not building anything right now except mines. Oh boy, if you want to learn programming from a man named Tim, then Tim from the Learn Programming Academy is the Tim you want to learn from. He's building mines every day with his excellent programming classes that are all easy to watch for all skill levels. You can watch them offline on your phone and they're almost all $20 or less. Can you hear that?
That got very loud for a moment. I'm sure they heard that one. Everyone's like, because there's a bit of noise suppression and stuff going on in the software, but it's like, yeah, that was loud enough.
Yeah, I'm just really sorry to. I mean, I feel like it's kind of okay for the people watching on Twitch because they're just like, oh yeah, I can see. At least I got something to look at. People who are listening to this as a podcast and like driving on the way to work, and they're just constantly just. There's not much I could do about it.
Well, apparently no one can hear it, so we'll put some in post for you guys.
Oh, that's great. That's so good. Okay, cool. Then just ignore the last 2 minutes of this show, and instead let's jump into the news because a ton happened specifically over the weekend, Peter, because it was BlizzCon.
It was indeed. How exciting!
It was exciting. I mean, so I think this is. I think it's probably the second BlizzCon I didn't watch live since, I would say the downfall of Blizzard.
I'm glad it came up early.
Yeah. I was a Blizzard fanboy way back and obviously still have a lot of affection for a lot of their games, but I'd kind of fallen off all of my Blizzard gameplay. And so didn't watch this one live, watched it later. Quite a bit of news coming out. So let's sort of go through. We'll touch on everything that got announced, but we'll go deep on the stuff that we actually care about, Pete. So stop me when something comes up.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you going to stop me for the Blizzard Arcade Collection, which was the first cab off the ranks, a digital re-release of Blizzard's classic games?
Not.
Okay, there you go.
Well, this is the trio of their classic arcade titles: Blackthorn, Rock and Roll Racing, and The Lost Vikings, of which I've played none.
Zero.
So I think this is very much this is to appeal to nostalgia. And because I have no nostalgia. Didn't really grab me.
That's true. And not just for Blizzard games, just in general.
In general.
You have no affection for the past whatsoever. So Blackthorn, Rock and Roll Racing, and Lost Vikings. It's not just on PC, but they're also coming to Switch, PS4, and Xbox One, and PS5, and Series X as well. So if you do have nostalgia and you're not dead inside like us, then maybe that's something for you. Speaking of dead, a lot of things are going to die in Diablo 4. Obviously, about 2 weeks ago, we sort of learned that it looks like no Overwatch 2 or Diablo 4 coming out this year, but that didn't stop them from revealing some info for Diablo 4 and revealing the Rogue class, which is returning to the franchise for the first time since Diablo 1. Pete, you're a Diablo fan.
Yeah. I would say that I'm not a super fan, but I definitely have an affection for the games. I loved Diablo 2. I played a lot of Diablo 2 back in the day. I played through Diablo 3 1.5 times.
Yep.
And I think that they are excellent versions of the dungeon crawling kind of games that they are. So I'm excited to play another one. And this Rogue class I never played because I never played Diablo 1. So it looks pretty spicy.
Yeah. Yeah, she's pretty fucked up. This,
Yeah.
this trailer. This is actually. I did actually drop in because I was on holidays when BlizzCon was happening, and I was like, oh, I'll just check Twitter, and I jumped into the live stream specifically when she just started laying ears on the table.
Yeah.
And I was like, God damn, Hearthstone took a turn. But yeah, I will.
You're right. She places it down like it's a 2-finger placement and a slide, like she's just put out a royal flush.
It's legit. She's playing poker with human bits. Look at that push. This part is actually the most violent thing I've ever seen, where she is taking down what looks to be kind of Kratos with 2 blades, and the push as they go into the shoulders, disgusting. The rogue gets a bunch of abilities, including, is it caltrops? Is that how I pronounce that? Caltrops?
I don't know.
Never known.
I guess cantrips is what they have in caltropes. I don't know. Yeah. I assume they're like cantrips in D&D. They're spells with infinite use, but like they always have a little cooldown.
But you can't be sued for it.
Spiky things. Luxton64 says caltrops, spiky things.
Spiky things. There we go. Thank you very much. Luxton, Ice Barrage, a poison style attack, and an AoE rain of arrows abilities. So that feels kind of specifically roguey there. The thing that I liked about this is that it has a system kind of like Elder Scrolls Oblivion, where you can choose different rogue sort of factions, I suppose, to align with. You do a quest chain for them, and then when you finish that, you unlock a combat style that is sort of tailored towards that specific group, which I think sounds cool. You can only be one group at a time, and then they asked the lead designer whether or not this is something that will be for all the classes in Diablo 4, and he replied and said, no, every class has their own thing that other classes get to be jealous about. So it looks like this sort of faction-specific combat style is something only the rogues will get, and all the other classes will get something different.
Well, to me, that's excellent news. I feel like the only thing that was stopping me from being super excited about more Diablo is that, I mean, we're looking at the footage of Diablo 4 here. It's like, does that look heaps better than Diablo 3 to me? Yeah. Does it even look heaps better than Diablo 2? I mean, yes, the models and stuff, but it looks like the same game, right? With a prettier skin. Yeah. So the idea of a more diverse play styles and better options for kind of linking up with your teammates in more synergized kind of ways is like, that's exciting. That you actually have to think about those roles and try and find the best ways to match with each other. I know that maybe the Barbarian doesn't have the same kind of role system, but it's like, oh, if they're going to be running with the hammer, then I want to be freezing people because he's going to be able to smash them in like one hit or something like that.
Yeah, totally. So, and it's also like I feel like since Diablo 3, there's been a lot more of these sort of games coming out that are doing lots of stuff that Diablo hasn't done. So, like, I mean, I think specifically Path of Exile has just been this game that just has so much replayability, so much variety in terms of way that you can approach it, so much ability to also just like completely respec your character in really massively different ways. So I think that them building part of that into the game is important for it to, like you said, really feel like something different as opposed to just like a slight iteration on a classic. Yeah. Speaking of classics, the next thing off the board there was Burning Crusade Classic, which is weirdly the 2 WoWs running parallel side by side now. We had WoW Classic come out. It was wildly successful from a fan perspective, and so they've got Burning Crusade Classic. The difference with this one is that even though it is basically the classic game, the lead software engineer, Brian Birmingham, had said that one of the things we're trying to do is move a little bit more off what we used to call no changes. There was a big push in the community with Classic to make sure that we're really going to be true to the original, and I think we did a really good job of delivering on that with Classic. We want to back off just a little bit with Burning Crusade, and we're kind of calling this some changes. We don't want it to be dramatic, but they are tweaking bits and pieces with Burning Crusade. Did you play this? Did you play Burning Crusade?
I didn't play enough WoW to see the Burning Crusade content, but yeah, I played while the Burning Crusade was happening. But I don't think I ever got past level 20. I think I never had a subscription to WoW, so I was always playing like
right.
At EB Games. They sold a disc for $2 that was like the demo install. So you'd install the entire game and then you would play to level 20 for free. And that's when I played like 8 characters up to level 20.
Amazing.
And then nothing more.
Whimsy Bobbins in the chat said, we caught this one live and we were vaguely horrified. I remember this being so fun, but not looking like this. It's a blast from the past when you look at this, particularly coming off the back of like Diablo 4 or something and the cinematics there, and then you see this. I have played through all of Burning Crusade. I like Burning Crusade. The classic stuff is just not for me. I'm just not that person that wants to go back to things that... It's not necessarily the more difficult, but just like less streamlined, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I know the argument for the WoW Classic thing is that it got streamlined too much, or it's too... they've polished too many of the rough edges off. But hopefully people will be excited for this, those people who do continue. It's so strange that they're just running this in parallel to WoW.
Yeah, I find it's the weirdest thing happening in video games right now.
Yeah.
Is that Blizzard, instead of making new games, are making they're releasing like version 1.1 now of a game that is already in version 8. It's like,
and that you can already go play.
Yeah,
like even though it's Burning Crusade is very different now than it was when it came out. If you start WoW from the beginning, you have to go through Burning Crusade already. It's just it just feels, I don't know. Apparently people are happy about this. I think those people need to take a long, hard look at their lives.
Yeah, that's a harsh truth, but
it's harsh but fair. So in terms of the changes that they're making, it's little things like one of the bosses was nerfed in Burning Crusade after it came out, or bug fixed, to just make it actually work properly. So that sort of stuff is going to be some of those like little changes and nerfs that happened in patches after the release of the game. Some of those will be applied just so it's somewhat accessible with that. But then they also said that they will let those bosses launch in pre-nerf forms. So guilds that want a challenge can try their hand at that when it's like, this is the broken version because you've played it too many times and you dominate the normal one.
I just feel like it's just. I think it's fair to say that you can become addicted to MMOs, right? Like, I certainly have that tendency. And this is just preying on people's addiction by feeding them more shit that they think they need. And it's not good for them. Yeah. I hate it.
Does, I should have looked this up. Does WoW Classic require a subscription?
That's a good question.
Or is it built into, maybe it's built into your current subscription,
if you have
so you don't actually need something separate. If anyone in the chat knows, let us know. But yeah, it's just because I feel like everyone who plays this already plays WoW, already has it installed. So, yep, we'll see how it's part of your normal subscription, according to the chat. Thank you, Shadmir. So at least that's something positive. And that subscription is also going to get you the new Shadowlands update, which is Chains of Domination. So this is an update to the Shadowlands expansion. This is their first big content patch. I dropped off WoW 4 years ago now, I think, and I haven't played anything since, so I'm very behind in terms of everything that's going on. Pete is even more behind than I am, but there's certainly lots of angry people pointing swords at each other, and that's exactly what I remember.
Is the guy in this cutscene Arthas?
Yeah. That's where kind of that's kind of where I'm at as well now at this point. So there's a new 10 boss raid called the Sanctum of Domination, a new PvP system, and a mega 8 boss mythic dungeon called Tazavesh, the Veiled Market. I like the name Tazavesh, so that's all that I have to say about
sounds
this.
Very exciting.
Exclusive.
What's veiled about it? The item you're buying, so you don't know until they reveal it? It's like
I was thinking the whole market is kind of walled off by fluttery sheets, but that's interesting that you go through the fluttery sheets and everything is wrapped up. So you just never know. I like that. Sorry, cough. Moving on. So speaking of things that were released and are coming back, This one's something that people have actually been asking for ages, and that is Diablo 2 is getting a remaster / remake called Diablo 2 Resurrected. This has been expected for a while, finally confirmed. So it's being made by the team behind the recent Tony Hawk Pro Skater remake. And it's not just coming to PC this time. It's going to be PC, last-gen consoles, next-gen consoles, and the Switch with cross-progression and cross-generational play. So PS4, PS5 can play together, and then when you put it down on your PS5 and go to your Switch, you'll be able to pick up where you left off. There's no official release date for Diablo 2 Resurrected beyond 2021, but there will be a small closed beta running for PC players later this year. Diablo 2 was your Diablo, Pete?
It was my Diablo. And can you even tell whether this footage is Diablo 4 or Diablo 2? No, they're identical.
Yeah, that's the thing that I never played Diablo 2. I got into my Diablo journey at Diablo 3, and Diablo, like, to be honest, Diablo has never really been a series that speaks to me. I tend to not like the sort of dungeon crawler, just like hordes of enemies thing, and I'm not really drawn to the art style of this sort of like grimdark gothic whatever. But with this, when I saw this, I was like, okay, so we've got this, we've got Diablo 4 probably next year, and Diablo the mobile game as well. So there's potentially 3 Diablo releases happening in the space of, like, let's say 18 months.
Yeah.
And I struggle to tell the difference between them just looking at them. And even though they might all play wildly differently, the fact that you could show me this and I could say, oh, that's Diablo 4, and not feel like an idiot when someone says no, feels like, is that overkill?
I think it probably isn't, because I don't think... I mean, maybe people who are real... I think the people who are going to get Diablo 2 Resurrected, again, it's nostalgia. It's the people who played it the first time. I don't think many people who never played Diablo 2 are going to bother playing this. It's like, particularly after how Warcraft 3 Reforged went, which obviously got critically, like, it was tepid, and then... from the community, it just got fucking slammed.
Yeah, it was like a tepid reaction, and then when they went, hang on a second, you own everything that we make in this? Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, so they made some awful decisions from that respect. Diablo 2 didn't have the, like, that kind of, like, user-generated content market, so I don't think it's going to suffer that exact fallback, but it's it could be another... what was perceived as a lazy kind of port up. But I think there's some features in this that at least, like, will be a nice fresh coat of paint for players who played through Diablo 2 before. And yeah, like, apparently all the cutscenes are getting redone from scratch. And they were like, at the time, nothing looked as good as the cutscenes that were in Diablo 2. They were phenomenal. So it's cool that they're going to be kind of like in a homage to them, rebuilding them to capture that same, like, aesthetic, but be rendered obviously probably in 8K because Blizzard can.
Like that. And I think I think it's a testament to the upgrade of how the game looks. That it does look so close to Diablo 4. I'm sure that when you actually put it on your PC, it's going to look different. But when you put it on video, it's a bit harder to tell. I do think that, like you said, this is a nostalgia thing for people. This is something that I probably will dip my toe into to just have some understanding of Diablo 2 as being such a monumental part of gaming history. But yeah, 3 Diablo releases in the space of like a year and a half. That's going to be interesting to see whether or not people get burnt out on these games that are supposed to be replayed over and over and over again. But the fact that those games are supposed to be replayed over and over is a testament to how hardcore the players are who play that. And this is probably exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah. And the only thing I would say for Diablo 2 remastered over Diablo 4 is that because it's an older game being upscaled, there's less viscera and giblets. And I feel like that's off-putting to me in the 4 trailer. Is like, there's one point in the Rogue trailer where she kind of like dives through a character with her like Legolas 2 little daggers out and just like cuts it in half. And there's just blood and gore everywhere. And it's like, I don't need that. Totally. I don't need that rendered.
And it's also like, I know people who... So remember when we did Pocket and John played a ton of
Diablo 3.
Diablo. And it's a bit like watching someone, it's like The Matrix, where they just stop seeing the thing in front of them, and he would just see the code of the game, and he would shut down as a human being and just like click. But what's happening on screen is so horrific. As it gets more and more realistic, Diablo to me is one of those games that, like, in the same way as like Wolfenstein, I suppose, that NCIS they make a fake version of a video game that a kid plays that's all about how that kid turned into a serial killer. And it's just someone tuning out as
cut to John doing 4 million AoE damage on a field of cows.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. And livers exploding everywhere, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's so true. That it's insane, the amount of gore.
It's definitely a part of the series, sure, but it's like back, in Diablo 2 era, they just didn't bother putting as many particles and bits.
Yeah. So it wasn't realistic anatomy.
Yeah.
It was just like a red spray, whereas now it's actually like, oh, that's the appendix. Moving on to something that spoke to me once, and Peter, I'm a little worried that it might start speaking to me again. So
this was the trailer of the show for me, and I think Hearthstone, spoilers, revealed. Hearthstone always have excellent trailers, so I can see why you've been lured by it for sure.
Yeah, so Hearthstone had quite a bit of news to announce. Some of it had already leaked beforehand. They announced Forged in the Barrens, which is their new expansion. Adds 135 new cards and a new keyword called Frenzy. Frenzy is a one-time effect that pops whenever a minion survives damage. So it survives on the board, and then it does something else. The expansion is going to launch in a few weeks' time when the Year of the Griffin roadmap begins. So that's like interesting to me, but I've missed the last 4 expansions of Hearthstone, even though I sunk thousands of dollars and hundreds, if not thousands of hours into Hearthstone beforehand. But this is kind of the normal thing, like expansion, new cards, new keywords, blah blah blah. But something they announced before is that they're retiring their sort of classic card set and they're introducing a core card set. Long story short, the issue with games like Hearthstone is the sort of like, and the thing that stopped me from going back to it is the amount of investment you need to put financially into the game if you fall off it. Or even just to stay in it, and cards becoming less and less relevant. So you need to continue having the new expansions that come out. They're trying to mitigate some of that by introducing this core set, which will change once a year, and it will take cards from a variety of different, like classic collections, Hall of Fame cards that they've retired before, wild cards, cards from previous expansions and stuff. And once a year, they will sort of like wrap up a new core set and say, this is the basic set that everybody has access to for free. And then you build on top of that with the expansions that come out. Yeah. So it means that you're going to be able to be more relevant consistently because that classic set has not changed since the game came out.
Yeah.
So that to me, I think is a positive change. It still means you're still going to need to buy these friggin' like card packs coming out, but the fact that they're changing that once a year on the year refresh is probably a positive thing.
Yeah, like to me, the reason I never got into Hearthstone was I saw even from like, I don't know when I picked it up, but pretty early, I think before an expansion had dropped, and I felt like I couldn't compete without buying packs and trying to get those legendary rolls and stuff. I was like, I mean, obviously, a smarter player would have been able to compete with the deck that they had, but to be defeated like at the like final hurdle by a legendary that I knew I would have had to pay $50 of random rolls out of card packs to try and get was just like so frustrating that it pushed me away from the game. To build even this new system, which I know the game is built, like the economy of the game is built around investing money to get the good cards, to expand your deck, to expand the ways you can play the game. But I would love it if there was a playlist in Hearthstone that's like just core cards. It's like you can't build on top of it. just use the core cards, then everyone's on the same playing field going into it, and it's really just about the strategies that you choose to play. So you've got all your core deck, and you go like, well, I'm going to play this kind of card. I guess that takes away most of the joy of Hearthstone from what I've seen of Hearthstone, which is like, oh, they've got that card and it pairs so well with that card, and that's part of the surprise of Hearthstone.
Yep.
But it's still like, to me, it's you're either all in Hearthstone or you're not in at all, and
Totally.
I've chosen to be not in at all. So
there is they are bringing in a something called the classic format, which basically is what the game is when it came out, before there were expansions. So that is a little more like, if you unlocked all the cards back then you can kind of play that and not have to worry about the fact that there's all these expansions coming out. But at the same time, it's also like part of the fun of the game is that you want these new cards. You want to, like, you just don't want to be playing with the same stuff over and over and over again. So that sort of feels more like a novelty, I guess, for me than necessarily like something that I'm going to be drawn to. However, the other thing that they are adding to Hearthstone, and this is the thing that actually made me go, oh, yeah, I can see myself getting back into this, is something called Mercenaries. So they didn't have any footage for this, but basically it seems like Mercenaries is going to be something like Slay the Spire. So it's a roguelike strategy RPG mode. You recruit Warcraft heroes, which is like just what you do every time in Hearthstone, is like, here's the famous Warcraft heroes that you all love. We'll build our story around them. And then you sort of run through a dungeon, gaining loot, XP every time you win a battle, and sort of putting together a team. And then all those heroes retain their progress between runs. So you're actually building up their power, which is something slightly different than like most roguelikes. So that, to me, is something that you can go in totally free. You're building stuff as it goes, it seems like. They've got a few modes in the game, like these sort of, when they put out an expansion, they have these small solo adventures that you can jump into for free. But this sounds cool because I love Slay the Spire. I love Monster Train, so these sort of like RPG run card games, and it's really taking Hearthstone and turning it more into, which is what they said, a card game platform, as opposed to like, this is Hearthstone the card game and this is a separate mode. Yeah
I think that's really cool. Like, and again, I always found the like the quest stuff that was built into the side of Hearthstone, you'd unlock the cards by playing through the quest stuff. I always thought that was the most interesting part of Hearthstone, for sure. Was like, go on this little Indiana Jones adventure and get the card at the end of it. So that's cool that there's more of that kind of thing, and it's a more fleshed out, developed part of the game.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what that actually looks like when it comes out. They said it's going to be late this year, and so we'll find out more about that. And then the final part of BlizzCon, no Overwatch 2 coming this year. It's probably coming next year, but we actually got a ton of Overwatch 2 info, and in a way that I haven't really seen a developer release info like this.
It was actually the worst part of the show for me, because it just frustrated the hell out of me. I was like, why are you... This is bullshit. Like, you needed to put Overwatch in the show. So you've got Jeff Kaplan, the sweetest man alive, in the firing line, going like, here's some things we're trying. And he literally says multiple times, this could all not make it into the game. But look at all this cool shit. But it's not going to be in the game necessarily.
That's so true. Yeah. I think he was talking about, oh God, who's the guy with the big shield and the hammer?
Reinhardt. Reinhardt sucks. We made him better, but we may not make him better.
And he's like, people want, when they look at Reinhardt, they want to play aggressively with him because he looks like he should be. So at the moment, we, the development team, are all playing a version of him that's really aggressive. But I should emphasize, quote, this may not ship. And it's like, that's interesting.
So it was like, there's some new map stuff, which looks really cool. Like the whole Rome map looks like beautiful. And to me, like they started talking about like, because this is very much like it was like 40 minutes. And if you're super into Overwatch, you should absolutely watch it, because there's going to be nuggets in here for sure that do make it into. Here's the Reinhardt bit. We're seeing like Reinhardt like skating around corners now because he's got a lot more control. But it's like, don't expect to play this. We just get to play this.
It's I think definitely that stuff was weird that they were like, oh, we're just experimenting. It's like, well, I expect you to be experimenting with, but don't tease me with something that when it comes out and it's not in there, I'm like, God, I wish Reinhardt played more aggressively.
Don't they know how much like gamers hate seeing something in a trailer and it not being
and
there?
it not being in a game? True. But I did like the way that they did this, where they basically went like, we're going to take you behind the scenes as to like where it's at right now. And I feel like we saw more of what a game is like right now in the middle of development than we usually do ever. There's lots of new stuff coming. Obviously the PvE hero missions being a big change to the game. You're getting new maps and new heroes and stuff, but those hero missions, which I wasn't really sure what that would be like, it seems like they're kind of like just located all over the world on the different maps, and you go to one and it's like, defend this spot for 5 minutes. It's based off this person. Some of these maps have like dynamic weather and that sort of thing. And while there will be more of a story mode that focuses around that, this feels more like little dungeons, I guess, that you run to level up your character.
To me, it read like, hey, remember how we killed Battleborn? We put Battleborn in Overwatch now.
Totally.
It's good that they're looking at putting more game modes into Overwatch, because like PvP exclusively like is great, and they should absolutely balance it and keep the meta evolving, and that's how PvP games stay interesting. But to give people more to do in it, like the seasonal Dota 2 things are always like an exciting change of pace. So to give people more to do in it gives more people an entry point to the game as well.
It's going to be interesting to see how they're incorporated into like the long-term strategy for Overwatch, because they said they want to add hundreds of them. Whether they are seen as just like a way which you can level up your character for something else, like I don't know what the end goal of those are. Whether it's just like, this is how you upgrade your character for something else, if they're kind of like they are just like running these dungeons or something, and how interesting that will be when, even if you've got hundreds of them, ultimately they all turn into the same thing. Like if you've got hundreds of variations of basically the same kind of thing, that still ends up feeling like you're just doing the same thing over and over again. But
totally. And I can't quite find it, but there was some reasonably fleshed out skill trees that were like,
yes, there were,
spending points into upgrading the characters in ways that suit your playstyle. So they weren't huge, but if you're putting points into progression, you're right. What for ultimately? Are you just going to fill the tree and then you're like, well, I'm done here? What's the end game of that kind of mode?
Yeah. Whereas if you're looking at something like a Diablo or a Paths of Exile, then you're looking at like new seasons come out with new big content drops, where this is why you're running this stuff over and over again. Server first, world first, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. The overwhelming vibe I got from this is everyone going, we're really, really, really excited that we were forced to make an Overwatch 2.
I had like huge reservations about like, it felt like a very Activision thing to like try and sell another $80 game. But I guess what this does do is go like, they're really trying to pull it all apart at the seams, and maybe they'll end up back where they started. But they've showed us that they're trying, seeing what sticks, and maybe Overwatch 2 will be a drastically different game, not just Overwatch 1 plus that little RPG thing, and Reinhardt can charge twice now.
Yeah, totally. And then it'll be interesting to see, because it's a bit like Destiny, right? Destiny came out, they then make Destiny 2, and then Destiny 2 became the platform, and they're like, no more Destiny sequels, we're just doing this. So if it follows that same thing, then we can expect Blizzard to depart from Activision in 2 years' time and be like, okay, we built this on your money. We're now taking it because we really don't want to make a third one now. So we'll see. So that was everything that sort of came out of that first day of BlizzCon. Announcements across all their major titles except for StarCraft, really. The Hearthstone thing, I'm excited about potentially jumping back into Hearthstone, but I'm also not, because like I don't have the time. I definitely don't want to be dumping that amount of money back into the game. But I'm weak, and I probably will.
You've got two kids, and Hearthstone is your third.
It really was beforehand. It really was like, it was something you have to constantly pay attention to it. You have to learn about all the parts that make sure you stay alive. It costs a fortune, and it demands all of your time. So it is a child.
And your wife walks in on you watching a man cosplay as a piece of bread.
So many explanations. Okay, let's move on and just quickly cover a couple of more things that have happened over the last couple of days. Staying with Activision, the new Call of Duty Season 2 is dropping at the end of the week. I'm very excited about this because, Peter, as we now know, I am a Call of Duty esports player. Yep. Activision outlined the major additions coming our way. This includes new multiplayer maps. There's 4 new maps coming, 1 on launch and then 3 over the course of the season. 6 new weapons, 4 new operators. But the big thing is the new Zombies Outbreak experience. So this is the Zombies mode, which is very, very popular. I have not really dipped into, but I am keen to properly check it out, and even more so now with Outbreak. Outbreak is a much bigger map, a large-scale zombie experience that's basically... It feels like it's a bit more like Warzone but zombies. But my thing with Warzone, my thing with Battle Royales is I don't like that going in there by myself or even with a team and playing against other people there. Like that when I die and I have to restart the whole thing again, that downtime is too long. But if I'm playing against a bunch of AI on that kind of map, then that to me is more appealing for how I play that when I'm not playing just multiplayer maps. But it seems, again, like Season 2, a pretty chunky addition to Call of Duty. Yeah,
it's like, is this at the end? This is the ship it's heading towards. Is this, because I haven't played COD in a while, is this the Warzone map? Is that the prison of the Warzone the ship is floating towards? So
yes, I'm fairly certain.
There's zombies on that ship that are about to crash into the...
I believe that is the case. I tend to just not care about the story. There's lots of like Adler's lost in the jungle, or he got kidnapped at the mall, or something. Like those are 2 wildly different things, and I just don't care. But I am really excited about Season 2. I feel like the cadence of update is great. Like this is nothing new to Call of Duty players. This has been happening for years and years. But as someone who has recently got back into it, I have just started to feel like, I've had my time with Season 1. I've had my time on these maps. I know these maps really well. This big new content drop is exciting. And the fact that I have a lot of zombie stuff that I can get into, that's very appealing to me as well.
Yeah, nice.
And then, so staying with shooters, announced overnight, new Rainbow Six Siege update. This is a brand new season, the Crimson Heist, and they're changing up a couple of ways with which Siege works. I love Siege because it's just been on this, I feel like we're watching a game that has figured out what it is. And it's so gratifying to see when games accomplish this well, of going like, we launched as one thing, but actually we're going to lean into this thing and sort of like embrace
it found its personality, because it was always a good mechanical shooter, but it didn't have anything other than being like Tom Clancy, real America. Like,
totally.
So by the time it found some color, when the color palette expanded, it became its own thing.
Absolutely. And when it sort of embraced this idea that, we're not like, yes, we are a game that is about military shooting, but also a lot of this happens in a stadium in front of a crowd, and that we don't keep any of our tactics secret. Like, it's basically turned into a real life esports thing. Anyway, so Crimson Heist is the new season that's coming out. They're also changing the way with which their operators are being released. So traditionally you would buy a year pass for Siege, and that would then, it was like $40 or something. And then that would give you access to all the operators that drop over the course of the year. They're changing that now, and operators will be tied to battle passes that come along. And then you'll get, there's 4 battle passes over the course of a year. You buy the battle pass, you get the operator, and then obviously there's all the unlocks. Or if you don't want to get the battle pass, you wait 2 weeks and the operator comes out, and you can just buy it for like credits or renown or whatever currency you want to use. Awesome. And so obviously they've had battle pass stuff in there before, but tying significant stuff like this, like the operators in there, I think makes that more appealing.
I remember like, when it first came out, I was like, I really like this game. And you're like, fuck this game for making me pay for operators. Yeah. And I was like, that's just like part of the game. It's like, you don't have to have them. And now that you absolutely have to have them, like in my opinion, you didn't have to have the Russian version of the person with the same gun back then. Yeah. But they're all very, like, they all have very different skill sets now. So they totally needed to find a better way to integrate the amount of characters they were rolling out.
Yeah. Because they've got 59, I think, characters at this point, which is just a ton. Yeah, it's in the 50s. And they said that they ultimately want to get to 100 operators, basically turning it into a MOBA.
That's crazy.
I think that of all the microtransaction systems, I think the Battle Pass for me is probably the one that I like the most. It feels
same.
like it engages me in the content with a steady drip of rewards, and generally, like, you go, okay, well, I'm going to dump some money here, you unlock some stuff straight away, or there's a free tier that you can run along. So that, like, I think that this to me is probably like the best choice for them, and obviously financially it's going to make sense for them. That's why they're doing it. And then their first operator that they're dropping is Flores, who is he's basically like a gentleman thief style, very sort of suave looking, fancy mustache, red glasses. His gadget is he has sort of like a remote mine that he can send off and detonate. So he's built around the idea of like disabling people who hold bomb rooms and that sort of thing, like those sort of more stationary characters. And so he's the first one coming out. And then also significantly from a story perspective, he's also the first openly gay character in the game, which is part of his backstory, which you won't really see in the game, but it's there in terms of the lore. And like League of Legends or Overwatch, the lore of Rainbow Six Siege is something that people have gotten very invested into.
Absolutely, yeah. Like even to the point where, like the game is selling itself on a trailer of like all these characters exist in the world where stadiums exist and we go and spectate. It's like it's all like connected now, as opposed to just being this other thing.
And then the final thing about that, I love the terminology of being the first openly gay character in the game, which is like
there's 58 others.
Yeah, but also like none of these characters are real. None of them are like secretly hiding their sexuality. Like they don't have independent thought.
You got to get into the lore, Nick. There's got to be some drama, some tension.
It's just to me, it implies like, oh no, there's probably some more in there, and you haven't picked up on it yet. We never wrote it there, but it's in the same way as J.K. Rowling saying like, "Oh, Dumbledore was gay." Yeah. It's like, it's just implied. But the idea that there's a bunch of closeted gay characters who in a game where none of that was written in.
Spetsnaz is a toxic environment, Nick.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The final story for today, talking about toxic environments. Peter Burns, the Mortal Kombat trailer for the new film dropped. Have you ever seen a man stabbed with his own blood? Because I have now. This is a violent film.
You know how we were just talking about lore being interesting? Yeah. Mortal Kombat's so shit. Why do they keep trying? Why? Yep. Just let it die.
Why does he have a birthmark in the shape of a logo? I love that. My favorite line is what we just saw on screen right there, which is he shows off this birthmark, and they go, and his sister goes, "It's a birthmark," and then someone says, "What is that?" And she goes, "It means he was born with it." It's like, yeah, we all know what a birthmark is. We're saying like, why are you showing it to me? Like the fact that there's a line of dialogue explaining what a birthmark is, as opposed to it's a birthmark that looks like the Mortal Kombat logo. That's weird. But the action of this, look, I agree. This is all incredibly dumb. Do I love the first Mortal Kombat film? With all of my heart. Am I going to watch this? Absolutely. Is it going to be terrible? Most likely. Yeah. Will I love it? Yes, as well.
I think it's going to be a fun watch. I think it will be a fun watch. I love the cast. Like, I think they've peppered in some good actors around the very cheap ones.
Yeah. Around the ones with masks on.
Yeah. So that's cool. And I love Josh Lawson. So it's cool that he, like, the thing was filmed in Adelaide. Yeah. So, represent Australian film industry.
Totally.
Getting Josh Lawson in there as Kano. I think that's the most Ocker Kano's ever been. So.
And also it's it's coming to streaming. HBO Max on April, so it might come here on Binge or something. Here's the blood stab. Oh my god, ridiculous. But yeah, it's just going to be. I don't know. We don't get enough of these sort of like weird pulpy terrible action, but something sort of sweet about it. I don't know. Mortal Kombat exists in a very weird line where you go like, oh, it's very dumb, but also like the things that you are doing are like not only illegal but like unethical to show people.
yeah, that's it.
Like it's a game where you could rip a spine out of somebody and then choke them with their own spine, but that's kind of like cute.
Yeah, it is the beauty of that game.
Yeah,
for sure.
So excited to see the Mortal Kombat film. So that is it. That is a ton of news that's happened over the last couple of days. We'll be back with more news on Wednesday. Until then, Peter, shall we back it out?
Let's back it out. Thanks, guys.
See you Wednesday.
Bye.